Commander Thexlar couldn't stop the tremor in his secondary appendages as he reviewed the tactical display one final time. The data was impossible. Ridiculous. Yet there it was, glowing in accusatory crimson across every screen in the command sphere. 3 days ago, his fleet had numbered 47 warships. Now, 11. 11 battered, limping vessels desperately burning toward the edge of the system, hoping the humans wouldn't pursue. The humans, those primitive, backwards apes, who'd only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 cycles ago. The species whose weapons had made his fellow officers laugh during the initial intelligence briefing. Thexlar remembered that briefing with crystal clarity now. Every dismissive word burned into his memory like a brand. Fleet Admiral Corvus had held up a holographic display of human armaments, each one more laughably crude than the last. Kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, fusion warheads. Technology the Kalixian Empire had abandoned 3,000 years ago. Primitive slugs throwing metal at each other, Corvus had said, mandibles clicking in amusement. Their ships are slow, their weapons inefficient, their tactical doctrine derivative. The humans will capitulate within a solar week. The other commanders had shared that confidence. They'd all seen the projections. Human vessels were indeed slower, their energy shielding inferior, their computer systems generations behind Kalixian technology. The Empire's plasma lances could burn through a ship's hull from 300,000 kilometers. Human missiles needed to get within 50,000 to be effective. It should have been a massacre. It was a massacre, just not the kind anyone expected. The invasion force had dropped into the Sol system with overwhelming superiority. 53 warships against Earth's pitiful defense fleet of 19 vessels. Thexlar had commanded the third wave, tasked with orbital bombardment, once the human ships were swept aside. He'd been looking forward to it. This would be his 6th world subjugated, the achievement that would finally earn him a seat on the Strategic Council. The humans hadn't bothered with preliminary negotiations. No surrender offers, no desperate pleas for mercy. The moment the Kalixian fleet entered weapons range, Earth ships opened fire. Thexlar had watched, bemused, as hundreds of primitive missiles streaked toward the advancing fleet, crude metal cylinders with basic guidance systems. Point defense will handle this, his tactical officer had reported, voice thick with contempt. Laughable. They're not even using proper energy-based armaments. The point defense systems did handle it. Mostly. Plasma bursts and laser grids shredded 90% of the incoming ordnance within seconds. The remaining missiles were dismissed as statistically insignificant, too few to matter, until they detonated. Thexlar still couldn't shake the image from his mind. The lead battlecruiser, the righteous Dominion, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, shields glowing as it absorbed scattered missile impacts. The next, a miniature sun blossomed in its place, expanding with such violence that 2 nearby destroyers were vaporized instantly. The thermal pulse was visible for light seconds in every direction. Fusion device, his science officer had whispered, data streaming across her console. Yield approximately 15 megatons, multiple warheads on each missile. They let most of them be destroyed just to get a handful through. Fleet Admiral Corvus had ordered an immediate advance, rage overriding caution. The humans wanted to fight? Fine, let them taste the Empire's true power. Plasma lances reached out across the void, invisible death, moving at light speed. 3 human ships died in the opening volley, their hulls flash-boiling under concentrated fire. But the humans didn't retreat. They accelerated toward the Kalixian fleet, closing the distance with reckless speed. Why would they do that? Every tactical doctrine said to maintain distance, to leverage whatever range advantage you possessed. The human ships were slower, less maneuverable. Closing to knife-fighting range made no sense. That was when Thexlar learned his first lesson about humans. They didn't care what made sense, they cared about what worked. At 30,000 kilometers, the human ships fired again. Not missiles this time. Solid metal projectiles. Tons of dense alloy accelerated to relativistic velocities by electromagnetic rails. The rounds moved too fast for point defense, struck too hard for standard shielding. One penetrator punched clean through a Kalixian cruiser. The kinetic transfer caused the ship to literally tumble end over end before secondary explosions tore it apart. Railguns, the tactical officer had gasped. They're using railguns. Why are they so effective? Because humans didn't care about efficiency, Thexlar understood now. They cared about force. Brutal, overwhelming, physics-defying force. A plasma lance might be more energy efficient, but a 100-ton tungsten slug moving at 30% light speed didn't need to be efficient. It just needed to hit. The battle devolved into chaos. Human ships wove through the Kalixian formation with desperate agility, firing everything they had. Missiles, railgun projectiles, laser batteries, particle beams, even what appeared to be nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers. Every weapon in their arsenal deployed simultaneously with zero regard for ammunition conservation. They're fighting like they're already dead, his tactical officer had observed, horror creeping into his voice. No retreat protocols, no fallback positions. They're spending ordnance like there's no tomorrow. That was the second lesson. Humans from a death world fought with death world logic. When you evolved on a planet where everything wanted to kill you, where the weather could end you as easily as the predators, you learned a simple truth: victory or death. There was no middle ground. Captain Jennifer Kowalski of the UNSC Indomitable exemplified that philosophy perfectly. Thexlar had intercepted her command channel during the battle, listened to her bark orders with a voice like tempered steel. Her ship was wounded, venting atmosphere from a dozen breaches, one engine offline, shields flickering. Any rational commander would have withdrawn. All batteries, concentrate fire on that carrier, Kowalski had ordered, her voice absolutely steady despite proximity alarms screaming in the background. I don't care if we're in knife fight range. Ran the bastard if we have to. For Earth, the Indomitable had indeed rammed the carrier after expending every missile in its magazines. 20,000 tons of human warship, still moving at combat velocity, struck the Kalixian vessel amidships. Both ships disintegrated in a cascade of secondary explosions, but the carrier took 3 nearby destroyers with it. That was the moment Fleet Admiral Corvus realized the truth. The humans weren't going to surrender, not ever. They would fight until every ship was destroyed, every soldier dead, every city reduced to radioactive ash, and somehow, impossibly, they were winning. The ground invasion proved even worse. Kalixian shock troops dropped onto Earth's surface, expecting primitive resistance, infantry with projectile weapons, maybe some chemical explosives. What they got was hell. Sergeant Tom Mackenzie crouched in the rubble of what used to be downtown Seattle, watching the alien dropships descend through smoke-choked skies. His platoon was down to 18 soldiers from the original 32, everyone running low on ammunition, exhausted beyond measure. They should have retreated an hour ago. But humans didn't retreat from Earth. Not while they could still pull a trigger. Here they come, his corporal muttered, checking the magazine in his rifle. Ugly bastards. The Kalixians advanced in textbook formation, plasma rifles sweeping for targets, shields interlocked for mutual protection. Mackenzie waited until they were 50 meters out, then keyed his radio. Now, the building behind the aliens exploded. Not from bombs, though Mackenzie's people had planted plenty of those too. This was something special. Something human engineers had thrown together in 12 frantic hours. A fuel-air explosive, crude as hell, made from commercial propane and fertilizer. The pressure wave turned 24 Kalixian soldiers into paste. Before the survivors could recover, Mackenzie's platoon opened up with everything they had. Rifle fire, machine guns, grenade launchers, even a repurposed mining laser one clever private had jury-rigged to a battery pack. The Kalixians' personal shields were designed to stop plasma and energy weapons. Solid bullets punch right through. Across every continent, the story repeated. Humans fought with weapons the aliens considered obsolete, employed tactics that violate every conventional doctrine, and absolutely refused to acknowledge when they were beaten. In the frozen mountains of Afghanistan, guerrilla fighters used centuries-old ambush techniques to destroy armored columns. In the Amazon, resistance cells booby-trapped entire square kilometers with improvised explosives. Over Jakarta, a crippled F-35 pilot ejected at the last second, letting his aircraft crash into an alien gunship at supersonic speed. The Kalixians had superior technology. Humans had superior desperation. And desperation, channeled through human ingenuity, was the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. Commander Thexlar reviewed the casualty reports again, hoping the numbers would somehow change. 36 ships lost, 70,000 soldiers dead or missing on the surface. The ground invasion had been recalled after just 9 hours, a complete withdrawal unprecedented in Empire history. And the humans had immediately counterattacked, launching boarding parties on crippled Kalixian vessels before they could escape orbit. Boarding parties. The savagery of it still stunned him. Instead of simply destroying helpless ships, human marines in vacuum suits had cut through hulls with plasma torches, stormed compartments with shotguns and grenades, seized control of vessels through sheer brutal aggression. 3 Kalixian ships had been captured intact, their crews dead or in custody, their computer cores stripped for intelligence. Commander, the humans are hailing, his communications officer reported, voice hollow with defeat. Admiral Chen wishes to discuss our surrender. Our surrender. The words hung in the air like poison. Thexler looked at his remaining ships, all damaged, all fleeing. He thought about Fleet Admiral Corvus, dead when his flagship was destroyed by a spread of nuclear missiles. He thought about the thousands of soldiers abandoned on Earth's surface, fighting a losing battle against an enemy that would never stop coming. The tactical display updated. More human ships were burning out of Earth orbit, fresh reinforcements launching to pursue the retreating Kalixian fleet. They wouldn't stop. That was the truly terrifying thing about humans. They didn't know how to stop. Thexler activated the channel. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. A withered human female with steel gray hair and eyes that held no mercy. Behind her, through a viewport, Thexler could see Earth, that beautiful blue marble of a death world that bred these impossible warriors. "This is Commander Thexler of the Kalixian Third Fleet," he said, each word an admission of failure that would haunt him forever. "I am authorized to discuss terms." Chen nodded slowly. "You can start by explaining why you thought invading humanity's homeworld was a good idea." Thexler had no answer for that. How could he explain that the intelligence had seemed so certain? That every projection showed easy victory? That the humans appeared so primitive, so backwards, so vulnerable? "We underestimated you," he finally admitted. "Yes," Chen agreed, her expression carved from granite. "Yes, you did. Now let me make something very clear, Commander. You're going to return to the Kalixian Empire. And you're going to deliver a message. Humanity has had enough of being underestimated. We've had enough of being dismissed as primitive. We've had enough of bullies with fancy weapons, thinking we're easy prey." She leaned forward, and Thexler saw something in those eyes that made his blood freeze. Not hatred, not rage. Something worse. Certainty. Absolute, unshakable certainty. "Tell your empire this. Tell every species in the galaxy we're humans. We evolved on a world that spent 4 billion years trying to kill us, and we're still here. We turned our planet's deadliest predators into pets. We split the atom and went to the moon, using computers less powerful than your translation software. We invented war crimes because regular war wasn't horrible enough. We are what happens when evolution gives up trying to kill a species and just makes them strong enough to kill everything else instead." Chen's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than any shout. "We don't have shields as good as yours. Our computers are slower. Our ships are less efficient. But we have something you don't. We have 4 billion years of deathward evolution teaching us one simple lesson: adapt or die. And humans are very, very good at adapting." She gestured to the tactical display between them, showing the wreckage of the Kalixian fleet. "You came here with technological superiority and absolute confidence. We met you with primitive weapons and desperate courage. Now look at the results and tell me which mattered more. Your plasma lances or our refusal to surrender?" Thexler said nothing. What could he say? Every word was true. The humans had been outgunned, outnumbered, outclassed. They'd won anyway because they didn't know how to lose. "Go home," Commander Chen said softly. "Take your survivors and go. Consider yourself fortunate that we're more interested in peace than revenge. But never, ever make the mistake of underestimating humanity again. We're not the dominant species on Earth because we were the strongest. We're the dominant species because we're the meanest, and we got that way by refusing to surrender when any sane species would have quit." The transmission ended. Thexler sat in his command chair, staring at the empty screen, trying to process what had just happened. The Kalixian Empire, with its 3,000-year military history, had just been defeated by species whose spacefaring civilization wasn't old enough to vote in most galactic councils. Around the galaxy, over the next weeks and months, Thexler's report would spread through diplomatic channels, intelligence networks, military academies, the story of how humanity refused to surrender, how they turned their supposed primitiveness into strength, how they won through sheer bloody-minded determination would become legend. And in military planning rooms across 100 worlds, a new standing order would be issued, a simple instruction that would save countless lives. When it comes to humans, never assume primitive means weak. Never assume outnumbered means defeated. And never ever assume that just because they should surrender they will. Because humanity learned its lessons on a world that showed no mercy. And species raised without mercy rarely feel the need to ask for it. They'd rather fight, adapt, overcome, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the most advanced one. Sometimes it's just the one held by someone who refuses to quit. The Kalixian fleet limped out of the Sol system, beaten and bloodied. Behind them, Earth spun on, beautiful and deadly, home to the species that had just taught the galaxy a lesson it wouldn't forget. The species that, when faced with impossible odds and certain defeat, looked at the universe and said one simple thing, no. And that single syllable, backed by human will and human weapons and human courage, changed everything. Because in a galaxy full of species that knew when to surrender, humanity was the one that didn't. Some called them reckless. Some called them insane. Some called them the most dangerous species to ever reach the stars. But after the Battle of Sol, everyone called them one thing, victorious. And in military headquarters across the galaxy, new tactical doctrines were being written. New threat assessments compiled, new warnings issued, all centered around one critical lesson. When you're fighting humans, technology isn't enough. Numbers aren't enough. Even superiority isn't enough. Because you're not just fighting their weapons. You're fighting 4 billion years of deathward evolution that programmed one simple rule into their DNA. Survive, adapt, overcome, never surrender. The Kalixians had learned that lesson the hard way. The rest of the galaxy was smart enough to learn from their mistake. Humanity was no longer the primitive newcomer to be dismissed. They were the species you didn't fight unless absolutely necessary. Because if you fought them, you'd better be prepared to win quickly and completely. Give humans time to adapt, and they would turn your own superiority against you. Give them reason to fight, and they would show you what desperation looked like when weaponized by intelligence and courage. The galaxy had been introduced to humanity. The galaxy would never forget the introduction, because humanity's calling card wasn't written in diplomatic protocols or trade agreements. It was written in the wreckage of those who'd underestimated them, carved into history by the species that simply, stubbornly, defiantly refused to surrender.